Hi guys, I hope you're well. As you probably heard a few days ago, President Trump shocked everybody when he said this.
I'll tell you what, if I ever got impeached, I think the market would crash.
So in this video, we're going to take a look at the major stock markets and try and answer this question, whether indeed the president is correct that the markets could crash if indeed he is impeached. And by the way, impeachment were his words, not mine. Now, before I start this video, it's important for me to first of all make something very clear, which is that I am not political. I don't have any political affiliations, and in fact, I don't really care about either left-wing or right-wing politics. I owe it to you as my subscribers that I am impartial and unbiased in my judgments. Now, before we actually take a look at these stock markets, it's important, first of all, to try and answer this question, which is, why did the president even mention that he might get impeached? Well, let me try and answer this question for you very quickly. You see, as you probably heard a few days ago, the longtime lawyer and confidant of President Trump, Michael Cohen, implicated the president in a federal crime. Now, we don't know at this point if that accusation is true or false, but if it is true, and again, it's a huge if, we don't know that yet, then the president's involvement in that crime, if it is true, could actually be an impeachable offense. Which means what? Which means that the midterm elections this November of 2018 could be very important for the president. Now, as I'm sure you already know, this November of 2018 is when Americans go to the polls for the midterm elections. And many analysts are now saying that if the Democrats, and I'm sure you probably know this already, it is no secret that Democrats are no fan of the president. If the Democrats win enough seats, if they win a majority this November in the midterm elections, they could very well push for the impeachment of President Trump. Now, I'm not the person who's saying this, by the way. It is, in fact, President Trump's own allies, like Steve Bannon, who's been saying this recently. Take a look.
This is going to be an up or down vote. It's a referendum on the Trump presidency. They are very focused. The opposition is going to be very focused on trying to win the House of Representatives, try to win Congress in order to impeach President Trump. Now,
before we take a look at the stock markets, let me first of all quickly say this, that the president actually does not want the stock markets to crash. As I'm sure you probably know, the president rejoices every time the stock markets go higher, as you'll see from his recent tweets. So it is no secret that the president does not actually want the stock markets to crash. And by the way, I think I have some good news for the president, because the evidence actually shows that the markets are unlikely to crash even if he gets impeached. So let me give you 4 reasons in this video why the markets are highly unlikely to crash if the president becomes impeached. Now, I'm going to start in reverse order. Reason number 4, the Trump rally. Take a look at this. This is November of 2016, and this is the day that Donald Trump became president. Now notice, just before the presidency of Donald Trump, the markets were highly uncertain. And in fact, at one point in November of 2016, just before the election, the stock markets nearly went below that green line. That green line is a 200 moving average. And that's important to mention because the 200 moving average, that green line, is often the dividing line between bull and bear market. Usually when markets go below the 200 moving average, that is a sign of a bear market, a potentially significant market crash. But you will see that just after that Donald Trump became president, the markets did the exact opposite of what many people said that it would. The markets actually went higher. It rallied. Notice that after the presidency of Donald Trump, this is what we saw. Notice that this is what's been called the Trump rally or the Trump train. So as you'll see here, from November of there it is. This is November of 2016, all the way to the peak that we made in January. As you will see, by January of 2018, the stock markets, the S&P 500, rallied by nearly 35%. A 35% rally since he became president. Now, you might well ask, why did the stock markets rally? Contrary to what everyone believed, why did the markets go higher? Because the markets, in other words, the investors, the smart money or Wall Street, they were making a bet that one of President Trump's key policies was going to be great for business, great for the economy. What was that policy? The Trump tax cuts. As I'm sure you probably know by now, in December of 2017, last year, President Trump lowered the tax rate from 35% down to 21% for corporations, which of course meant more money for businesses, more money for corporations. So on the day that Donald Trump became president, the markets already were making that bet that that particular law, that particular policy of President Trump was going to go through, hence why the markets made this huge rally. Remember, guys, that investors in the stock market, the smart money, they buy on rumor and they sell on the news, which means that the markets often move in expectation of something happening, not after something has already happened. So one of the main reasons why the stock markets are unlikely to crash if President Trump becomes impeached is that the markets have already got what they wanted from the president, the Trump tax cuts. Okay, let's go to reason number 3 and take a look at this and notice that this is January 2018. Notice that the markets plunged after that. Now, ask yourself this question. What has been the number one reason why the markets have been so volatile, so up and down since January 2018? That is because since January of 2018, President Trump has been vocal about one important thing that the markets have not liked, which is trade tariffs. The markets are deeply afraid of a trade war with China. And that has been the one thing that has been causing a lot of volatility in the stock markets. The fear of a possible trade war with China and maybe even Europe. Every time the president would talk about a trade war or trade tariffs on China, the markets would sell off and indeed we'd see a lot more volatility. Now, if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense because the markets or Wall Street are globalists. People in Wall Street, the traders, the big investors, they don't like trade tariffs. They don't want a trade war. While imposing trade tariffs on China may work with President Trump's base, his key supporters, it does not work so well with the markets, or indeed the globalists, the Wall Street investors. So here's the thing, if you think about that. If President Trump becomes impeached, and again, that's an if, then that removes one of the key fears that the stock market has about the economy and about the global markets. So reason number 3 why the stock markets probably won't crash if President Trump is impeached is that one of the key fears that the globalists, the Wall Street investors have about the markets, in other words, a potential trade war with China, is removed. Now, let's go to reason number 2. Mike Pence. Now, it is no secret that there are strong differences between President Trump and his Vice President, Mike Pence, both in style and personality. Now, let's just think about that for a second. If President Trump becomes impeached, and again, that's a huge if, then it's highly unlikely that President Trump is just going to wait around until he becomes impeached. In fact, it's far more likely that the president would resign before even the impeachment occurs. Which means what? If President Trump were to resign, then his successor would be Mike Pence. Now, here's something we do know about Mike Pence. He is not just a Republican, but he is also an establishment figure. Being an establishment figure makes Mike Pence likable to the globalists, the Wall Street investors. But also, according to many sources in Washington, politicians in Washington, D.C. prefer to work with Mike Pence than President Trump. Why? Because Republican politicians in Washington are deeply afraid of the president. As we've already seen, all President Trump has to do is do a tweet to his base, and those tweets from the president could put the jobs of those particular politicians in jeopardy. So a lot of Republican politicians would much rather work with someone they can control, like Mike Pence, than President Trump, whom they cannot control. And again, remember, the stock markets prefer to have someone they can work with, a globalist and indeed an establishment figure like Mike Pence. And that again is seen as a positive for the stock markets. Now, let's go to reason number 1, which I think is one of the most important reasons why the stock markets will probably not crash if President Trump becomes impeached. Let me ask you this question. How long have we known, or how long have we heard about this potential impeachment of President Trump? Has it been in the last few weeks, the last few months? No, the media has been talking about the impeachment of President Trump for more than a year. In fact, since the day that President Trump became president, the media has constantly been talking about the possible impeachment of President Trump. So no, we've been talking about this now for many, many months, potentially over a year. And notice that even in the last few weeks, as the talks about a potential impeachment has been increasing, the market has continued to rally higher, completely ignoring all the news about a potential impeachment. Which means what? It means the stock markets have already priced in the possibility of President Trump's impeachment. the markets have already adjusted. They've already digested the potential possibility of President Trump becoming impeached, which means what? It means that given the fact that stock markets are continuing to rally, despite all the bad news we've been hearing in the last few weeks since Michael Cohen and all the other stuff we've been hearing about impeachment, the markets do not care anymore. Remember, guys, the markets have already got what they wanted from the president, the Trump tax cuts, and removing the threat of a trade war with China. So guys, that actually should be good news for the president, because what I've just said in this video is that the president should be happy about this, because I know he does not want the markets to crash. So, Mr. President, if you're watching this should actually be good news for you. Thank you very much, guys. I hope this video helps. And if it has, please give it a thumbs up. And also, please remember to subscribe to our videos for future updates.